The 1980s produced some of the most unforgettable songs in pop music history, tracks that still play at every party, wedding, and road trip decades later. Funny enough, plenty of people who know every word couldn't name the artist behind the song if you asked them directly. So today, we're counting down 15 songs from the 80s that are bigger than their artists. Number 15, Whip It by Devo.
Whip it! Whip it good!
Devo formed in Akron, Ohio in the early 1970s, built around a concept the band called de-evolution, the idea that humanity was regressing rather than progressing. Their look, built around red energy dome hats and matching yellow jumpsuits, became one of the most recognizable images to come out of new wave music. Whip It, released in 1980 as part of the album Freedom of Choice, became their only major crossover hit, climbing into the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 the following year. The song's jerky mechanical rhythm and quirky music video, which received heavy rotation on the newly launched MTV, helped push it into mainstream pop culture far beyond the band's usual audience.
When a good time turns around, you must whip it.
Devo continued releasing music throughout the decade, but no later single ever came close to matching the cultural reach of that one song. Ask most casual music fans today to name another Devo track, and most will draw a blank, even though nearly everyone recognizes the energy dome hats and the driving beat of their biggest hit. The band members themselves have spoken in interviews about the strange experience of watching one song completely eclipse the broader artistic project they had spent years building. Founding members Mark Mothersbaugh and Gerald Casale had originally conceived Devo as an art school project built around satire and performance concepts, and the band's earlier work leaned heavily into that experimental, almost academic approach before Whip It pushed them toward unexpected mainstream pop stardom.
I say whip it!
Number 14, Africa by Toto.
I hear the drums echoing tonight.
Toto formed in Los Angeles in 1977, made up largely of accomplished session musicians who had already played on records for artists like Michael Jackson and Boz Scarborough before forming their own band. Africa, released in 1982 as part of the album Toto 4, eventually reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1983, driven by its layered percussion and instantly recognizable synthesizer opening. Despite the band releasing a steady stream of albums throughout the 1980s and beyond, Africa remains the song most casual listeners associate with the group, often without being able to name any other single they recorded. The song experienced a massive resurgence decades later, thanks to internet memes and streaming playlists, introducing it to younger audiences who had no context for the band's broader catalog or their reputation among session musicians. Toto actually won a Grammy Award for Record of the Year for a different song, Rosanna, released the same year, yet that track never achieved anywhere near the lasting cultural presence of Africa. Band members have noted in interviews how strange it feels that their most celebrated industry recognition came from a different song entirely than the one most people actually remember them for. Keyboardist David Paich, who co-wrote Africa, has described the song's slow build toward cultural ubiquity as something the band never could have predicted during the initial recording sessions, given how understated the track's chart performance seemed compared to some of their other singles at the time of its original release. Number 13, Down Under by Men at Work. Men at Work formed in Melbourne, Australia in 1979, and their song Down Under became an anthem representing Australian culture and identity to audiences around the world. Released in 1981 and included on their debut album, Business as Usual, The song eventually reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1983, driven by its distinctive flute riff and cheerful sing-along chorus. The band did have another top 10 hit with Who Can It Be Now, but Down Under became so closely associated with Australia itself that many people assume it functions as something close to an unofficial national song. Decades after its release, the song became the subject of a legal dispute when a court ruled that its flute riff bore similarities to an older Australian folk song.
She said, "Do you come from a land down under?"
Resulting in a settlement affecting royalties from the recording. Despite that later controversy, the song's cultural footprint only grew over time, regularly appearing at international sporting events and celebrations connected to Australia. Most casual fans outside of Australia would struggle to name another Men at Work song, even though the band charted several singles throughout the early 1980s, before eventually disbanding later in the decade. Lead singer Colin Hay has continued performing the song throughout his solo career in the years since, often noting in interviews how the track's connection to Australian identity has only grown stronger with time, well beyond anything the band anticipated when they first recorded it.
You better run, you better take cover.
Number 12, Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds.
Don't you forget about me.
Simple Minds formed in Glasgow, Scotland in 1977, building a following throughout the early 1980s with a string of moody atmospheric singles in the UK and across Europe. The band was actually not the first choice to record Don't You Forget About Me, since the song was written by Keith Forsey and Steve Schiff specifically for the 1985 film The Breakfast Club, and several other artists reportedly turned down the opportunity before Simple Minds agreed to record it. The song became the band's only #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, reaching the top of the chart in the summer of 1985, largely because of its permanent association with the film's iconic closing scene.
You recognize me.
Simple Minds actually resisted performing the song live for years afterward, with lead singer Jim Kerr expressing mixed feelings about a song the band hadn't written themselves, overshadowing their own original material. Despite charting several other singles throughout the decade in both the UK and America, none reached the same level of recognition among American audiences as this one soundtrack single. For an entire generation who grew up watching the film on repeat, the song and the band's name never quite connected in most listeners' minds, with the movie itself often getting the credit instead. Director John Hughes reportedly pushed hard for the song to anchor the film's closing moments, and that pairing between the movie and the music became so tightly linked over time that many younger fans discovering the track today assume it was written specifically for the film, rather than nearly being turned down by the band that ultimately recorded it. Number 11, Take On Me by a-ha. a-ha formed in Oslo, Norway in 1982, and their single, Take On Me, became one of the most recognizable songs of the entire decade after its re-release in 1985. The song actually failed to chart during its initial release in 1984, and it wasn't until the band re-recorded the track and paired it with a groundbreaking pencil sketch animated music video that it finally caught fire, eventually reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. That video, blending live action with hand-drawn rotoscope animation, received heavy rotation on MTV and won several categories at the MTV Video Music Awards the following year. Though a-ha continued to enjoy substantial success across Europe throughout the 1980s and beyond. American audiences largely associate the band with this single song, often unaware of their continued career and popularity overseas. Lead singer Morton Harold's soaring falsetto during the song's chorus became one of the most imitated vocal moments of the decade at karaoke bars for years afterward. The band has said in interviews that they've grown to embrace the song's singular fame rather than resent it, recognizing how rare it is for any single recording to remain so consistently popular across multiple generations of listeners. The video itself, directed by Steve Barron, took months of painstaking rotoscope animation work to complete, frame by frame, a process that was highly unusual for a music video budget at the time, and helped set a new visual standard other artists tried to imitate throughout the rest of the decade. Number 10, Rock Me Amadeus by Falco. Falco, born Johann Hölzel, was already a major recording star across Austria and Germany by the time Rock Me Amadeus was released in 1985, built around a stylized tribute to composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The song became the first German-language single to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, achieving that milestone in early 1986 and introducing Falco to a massive American audience almost overnight. Despite his continued popularity throughout German-speaking Europe with numerous other singles, both before and after this release, American listeners largely remained unaware of his broader catalog, treating him as a one-song phenomenon. Falco's blend of rap-influenced vocals, synth-pop production, and playful historical references made the song stand out from nearly everything else on American radio during that period. He continued recording music throughout the remainder of the decade and into the 1990s, remaining a major celebrity in Austria until his death in a car accident in 1998. For most American fans, though, his name and this single song became permanently linked, with little awareness of the sustained career he maintained throughout Europe for the rest of his life. Falco had already scored an earlier European hit with Der Kommissar a few years prior, a song that was later covered in English by other artists and reached American audiences in a form separate from Falco's own original recording, further complicating how little credit he received in the United States for his broader body of work. Number 9, Da 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 by Trio.
What you do and what you don't.
Trio formed in Germany in the early 1980s, built around a minimalist, deliberately simple sound that stood in sharp contrast to the increasingly polished production dominating pop radio at the time. Their song, Da Da Da, released in 1982, became an unexpected international hit, reaching the top 10 in several European countries and climbing into the lower rungs of the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. The song's stripped-down arrangement, built around a basic drum machine beat and a repetitive, almost nursery rhyme-like vocal melody, made it instantly recognizable despite its unconventional structure. Because the band intentionally avoided the layered production techniques common among their contemporaries, some critics initially dismissed the song, though its infectious simplicity eventually won over a wide international audience. The track later found a second life decades later after being featured prominently in television commercials, introducing it to entirely new audiences who had no connection to its original new wave context. Trio released additional albums throughout the 1980s, but none of their later material ever approached the commercial reach of this single song. Most listeners today who instantly recognize the song's opening beat would be hard-pressed to identify the band's actual name. The three members of Trio, Stefan Remmler, Krale Krawinkel, and Peter Behrens, deliberately stripped away nearly every layer of studio production common to pop music at the time, an approach that initially confused industry executives, but ultimately became central to the song's lasting, almost hypnotic appeal. Number 8, Tarzan Boy by Baltimora. Baltimora was fronted by Jimmy McShane, an Irish-born singer who relocated to Italy and formed the project with Italian producer Maurizio Bassi in the mid-1980s. Their song, Tarzan Boy, released in 1985, became a massive hit across Europe before eventually climbing into the American Top 20 the following year, driven by its bouncy synthesizer hook and playful vocal delivery. The song's chorus, built around a distinctive yodeling-style vocal effect, made it instantly recognizable on the radio even to listeners who had never heard of the band before. Despite releasing additional music throughout the remainder of the decade, Baltimora never came close to replicating the commercial success of this single breakout hit.
On my own, like Tarzan Boy.
The song experienced a notable resurgence in the early 2000s after being featured in a popular television commercial, introducing an entirely new generation to a song many assumed was simply an anonymous piece of retro advertising music. Jimmy McShane passed away in 1995, and much of the band's history remained relatively obscure to casual fans, even as the song itself continued receiving steady airplay and licensing placements for decades afterward. For most listeners, the bouncy, upbeat track became far more familiar than the story of the performer who actually recorded it. The song's Italian production origins also surprised many American listeners once they learned about them years later, since the track's polished, radio-friendly sound gave little indication that it had come together through a collaboration between an Irish vocalist and an Italian producer working outside the traditional British or American pop machine. Number 7, Mickey by Toni Basil. Toni Basil had already built a substantial career as a choreographer and dancer, working with major artists including David Bowie and Talking Heads, well before she released Mickey as a single in 1982. The song, a reworking of an earlier British glam rock track called Kitty by the band Racy, became a massive hit once Basil rewrote the lyrics to address a male love interest and paired the recording with an energetic cheerleader-themed music video. That video received constant rotation on MTV during the channel's early years, helping push the song to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the winter of 1982. Basil's extensive background in choreography meant she brought a level of visual precision to the video that stood out from many other music videos being produced during that same period. Despite the massive success of the single, Basil never had another song reach anywhere near the same level of chart performance, and she gradually shifted her career focus back toward choreography and directing throughout the rest of the decade. Most fans who grew up seeing that cheerleader routine on MTV have little awareness of her substantial behind-the-scenes career, shaping the visual style of other major artists during the same era. Basil had actually been choreographing music videos and film sequences since the 1960s, working on projects long before Mickey made her a household name in her own right, a career arc that most casual fans only learn about after specifically looking into her background. Number 6, Turning Japanese by the Vapors. The Vapors formed in Guildford, England in the late 1970s, eventually finding mainstream success with their single, Turning Japanese, released in 1980 as part of their debut album, New Clear Days. The song became a major hit across the UK and Europe, reaching the top 3 on the British singles chart and cracking the top 40 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. Lead singer David Fenton has explained in later interviews that the lyrics were intended as a broader reflection on obsession and isolation, rather than referencing any single specific meaning. despite decades of listener speculation about the song's actual subject matter.
I got your picture of me and you.
The band's driving new wave sound and Fenton's clipped vocal delivery made the track stand out on radio playlists, dominated by more polished pop productions during the same period. Despite the song's substantial commercial success, the Vapors struggled to replicate that same level of attention with any of their later singles, and the band eventually broke up later in the decade. The song has continued to receive steady airplay and licensing placements in film and television for decades since its original release, keeping it in public memory even as the band itself faded from most listeners' recollection. The track's title alone became something of a cultural catchphrase over the years, referenced in other songs, films, and television shows long after most people had forgotten which band originally recorded it. Number 5, The Safety Dance by Men Without Hats.
We can dance, everything's out of control.
Men Without Hats formed in Montreal, Canada in the late 1970s, led by singer and songwriter Ivan Doroschuk, who wrote The Safety Dance partly in response to being ejected from a nightclub for dancing in a style considered too aggressive for the venue's rules against pogo dancing. Released in 1982 as part of their album Rhythm of Youth, the song became an international hit the following year, reaching the top 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the summer of 1983. Its accompanying music video, filmed in the English countryside and featuring medieval and Renaissance-inspired imagery alongside a dancing dwarf performer, became one of the most memorable and frequently parodied videos of the early MTV era. Despite the band releasing several additional albums throughout the remainder of the 1980s, none of their later singles ever approached the commercial success of this one breakout hit. Doroschuk has spoken in interviews about the strange experience of writing a deeply personal song about nightclub politics that eventually became one of the most widely recognized dance anthems of the decade. For most casual listeners, the song's distinctive synthesizer riff and unusual video imagery remain far more familiar than any actual knowledge of the band's name or their broader catalog.
We can dance, doing it from pole to pole.
Number 4, I Ran So Far Away by A Flock of Seagulls. A Flock of Seagulls formed in Liverpool, England in 1979, quickly becoming known for their futuristic, synthesizer-driven sound, alongside frontman Mike Score's dramatically styled, gravity-defying hairstyle. Their song I Ran So Far Away, released in 1982 as part of their self-titled debut album, became a defining new wave hit, reaching the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1983. The song's shimmering guitar effects, created by guitarist Paul Reynolds using a delay pedal technique that became widely imitated by other bands, gave the track a distinctive, spacious sound that set it apart from other new wave singles of the period. Heavy rotation on MTV helped cement the song's popularity, with Score's striking hairstyle becoming almost as recognizable to viewers as the music itself. Despite releasing additional albums throughout the decade, the band never matched the commercial impact of this single breakout hit, and internal lineup changes throughout the 1980s made it difficult to sustain their early momentum. Mike Score has continued performing under the band's name for decades since, often noting in interviews how strongly audiences respond to hearing this one particular song, regardless of their familiarity with anything else the band recorded. Number 3, Come On Eileen by Dexys Midnight Runners. Dexys Midnight Runners formed in Birmingham, England in 1978. led by singer Kevin Rowland, who pushed the band through several dramatic image changes throughout their early career before settling on the distinctive dungarees and neckerchief look tied to their biggest hit. Come On Eileen, released in 1982 as part of the album To Rye A, became a massive international success, reaching #1 on both the British and American charts, a rare achievement for a British band during that period. The song blended Celtic-influenced strings and fiddle work with soulful vocals, creating a sound that stood apart from the synthesizer-heavy new wave dominating much of the charts at the time. Despite that massive success, the band's lineup and sound shifted dramatically in the years that followed, and they never achieved comparable chart performance with any later single, either in Britain or the United States. Kevin Rowland has discussed in interviews the pressure of following up such an enormous hit, describing the experience as both a blessing and a creative burden throughout the rest of his career. For most casual listeners today, the song's distinctive tempo shifts and sing-along chorus remain instantly familiar, even though the band's actual name rarely comes up in conversation. Number 2, 99 Luftballons by Nena. Nena, both the stage name of singer Gabriele Suzanne Kerner and the name of her German band, released 99 Luftballons in 1983, a song addressing Cold War anxieties through the story of 99 balloons mistakenly triggering a military response. The German-language version became a massive hit across Europe, and an English-language version, titled 99 Red Balloons, later helped push the song into the American top 10 as well, giving the band rare crossover success with two different language versions of the same recording. The song's driving new wave production and urgent, escalating storyline made it stand out among other Cold War-era songs addressing similar themes during the same period. Despite the band continuing to release music throughout Germany for years afterward, and Nena herself maintaining a long solo career following the group's breakup, American audiences largely remained unaware of anything beyond this one breakout single. The song experienced renewed popularity decades later, frequently appearing in films and television shows set during the 1980s as a quick shorthand for the era's political tensions. For most English-speaking listeners, the song and the singer's stage name never quite connected, with many assuming 99 Luftballons was performed by an anonymous act rather than an artist who continued a substantial career for decades afterward. Number 1, Tainted Love by Soft Cell. Soft Cell, made up of Mark Almond and David Ball, formed in Leeds, England in 1977, though it was their synth-pop cover of Tainted Love, released in 1981, that became one of the defining singles of the entire decade. The song was originally written by Ed Cobb and first recorded by Gloria Jones in 1964, but Soft Cell's stripped-down electronic reinterpretation transformed it into a completely different kind of record, one built around a stark synthesizer riff and Almond's emotionally raw vocal delivery. The song reached number 1 on the British singles chart and eventually spent an unusually long stretch on the Billboard Hot 100, setting a record at the time for the longest continuous chart run of any single in American chart history. Despite that historic commercial performance, Soft Cell struggled to replicate that same level of mainstream success with any of their later singles, and the duo eventually went their separate ways later in the decade before periodically reuniting for select projects. Mark Almond has continued a substantial solo career in the years since, though most casual American listeners remain unaware of his work beyond this single song. For an entire generation, this stark, minimalist track became one of the most recognizable songs of the era, forever overshadowing the modest chart history of the duo who recorded it.
Tainted love.
Looking back at all 15 of these songs, it's remarkable how a single track could completely define an artist's legacy in the minds of casual listeners, regardless of how much other music they actually released. These songs became bigger than the bands and singers behind them, living on through movies, commercials, and endless replays at parties long after most people forgot who actually sang them. It says something about the strength of a great hook and a well-timed music video that a single 3-minute recording could outlast an entire career in the public imagination. If any of these songs brought back a memory, let us know which one in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look back at the biggest one-song wonders of the decade, give this video a like and subscribe for more nostalgic dives into the music history behind the songs you grew up with.